So let's begin our panel discussion. We have received one question in our socials by Mr. Sabin. So, Bobby, people are like, let me paraphrase this. People are like on the development field like more than 2 years. They are being a developer and they want to switch their role to different role like a Scrum Master. But they are like confused on how should I start with a Scrum Master role? What should I learn? So they are always being confused, and there is a question that is striking on. So what would be your suggestion to start the Scrum Master role, and how could you become a Scrum Master? Over to you, Babistai.
Thank you, Milan sir. Thank you, Savinji, for your question. So if I understand this question, basically what he wants is people are from different areas, not per se Scrum Masters, and they want to grow into this role. So what are the things they need to do to prepare for this role, or to, actually finally be in this role? So there's no such thing like algorithm, like you have to learn this in order to grow to Scrum Master role, because in Scrum Master role, basically you actually do, or you actually facilitate or provide things that is done in Scrum. Now, in order to kind of go into this role as a developer, you can already have all these things, all these characteristic skills, all the skill set that you can do as a developer, which will bring down to, we have Samir, we have Sital, they are also from different kind of roles when they started, before they starting doing Scrum. Sital did QA first, Samir was more of an account manager. So in order to grow into this role, you need to have certain skill sets. So for example, you need to understand how to make decisions. You can grow in this role while doing a development. You can improve on communication role. And by communication, not one is speaking in English. Communication is right communications, creating transparency, this kind of skills you can grow. You can grow some leadership skills, because it's all about people management if you're a Scrum manager, because you have to facilitate, you have to coach them. So you need to also understand this kind of skills. And these are all the things you can learn while doing development. So you can do Scrum Master, you can learn in that on the job as well, but you can already learn all these kind of role, characteristics or skill sets while being a developer, because as a developer, obviously you can be a lead of that developer, technical lead or team lead, or any kind of thing that you do in your organization. In this role also, there are certain things that you do that will help you when you become a Scrum Master. So basically, there is no like rocket science. You need to talk to your immediate supervisors that I want to go in this role. So I don't want to go on individual track of my career growth where I learned a lot of technical stuffs. I want to go in more managerial track. So basically, I think your organization will facilitate or empower you on this kind of skill sets where there are more managerial stuffs. And slowly, when you grow in this kind of skill set, I think it will be right time to jump into the Scrum Master role. So there is no any kind of specific job description on this. Basically, if you have to summarize, you need to know Scrum, because you're coaching Scrum towards your team. So that is the ultimate basic core thing. But other things are more behavioral aspect that you need to learn, because you are part of the Scrum team. You have to maybe talk to customers. Sometimes you have to talk to product owners. You have to talk to development team. You have to resolve conflicts. So in order to kind of sort this out, you probably need to learn those kind of behavioral skills that will help you in this kind of job.
All right. Any of my colleagues want to add up on this? Okay, no. Moving forward. So project management is about process and people. Simon, sir, so you have been working on a product for a long time. Mm-hmm. So when we manage team, there is a team dynamics. So how important is team dynamics in the Scrum process? And what is your experience like? What you can share your experience about the team dynamics and the importance of team dynamics in the project.
Okay. So in my experience, while working in a Scrum team, we like every team members want, a healthy team. I mean, rocking team, So what I did was I created the the best team, because I promoted transparency. I empowered them. I trusted them and give them the chance of failing. I mean, I created the fail-safe environment for them. Okay, so what happened is anyone joining our team can easily sync up. So I created that kind of team dynamics. So yes, that's it, Milanji, from my side. If anyone wants to add.
All right. So we have received one question in chat from Suryaji. So it's about managing the deadlines. So I would like to request Samir, how do you manage the deadlines, ekdam strict deadlines in Scrum? Your experience about this.
Uh, Recently, I've been working on a this answer is totally based on my experience, how I'm dealing with the situation, the factor that I am currently in. So it may not be relevant for you, but it's something that you can relate to your own project. Uh, Currently, I'm working on a project where there is a client that has been in the industry for like 1911. So a very old and a multi-billion-dollar company. But what they are doing to us at the moment is giving us a certain budget and also hiring certain developers. So I know I have a one backend developer, I have one front-end developer, uh, and a designer on demand. So they have certain deadlines like, okay, I want to launch this app on both Play Store and App Store to Uganda or wherever they want, in the country they want on this date. But I just cannot agree, without even looking at the app, without even looking at the functionality that they want us to build with the resources that I have and with the time availability I have. So only and after analyzing all these factors that I can accumulate at the moment, then only I can answer to them whether this is possible or not, because transparency is the key in Scrum. If it's possible, it's possible. If it's not possible, it's not possible. You have to direct with the team. You have to direct with the client, you know, and you just cannot ask your developers to work on late, even if they can't, and something like that. Saturday, Sunday, that is not just workable for me. So what I did was, according to the budget, according to the time frame, according to the developer, and according to the functionality that they want us to build, I planned it out. Okay, for this, how many sprints will I have? Okay, how many sprints will I have, and how many development hours will I have? According to that, I planned out things. Okay, this is possible, this is possible, this is possible. And okay, certain things are not possible. So what I say to my client is directly, transparently. Okay, so these are the things with the availability of my developers and with these holidays, public things, certain things account in taking in account. These only things can be possible to be launched. And these are the things, if you want to do us, then these can be taken as a uh, improvements. And for that also, what I create is an MVP. Okay, for this app, what are the most viable thing, for the minimum thing that this app needs to be released on the released in the Play Store or App Store both? What are the minimum things that will make this app workable at the moment? And then only I can launch it with the time frame and budget I have. Okay, and after that, I can negotiate with my clients, like not me, but my management side, like Bovisdai, and there are other superior people. So they can negotiate, like, okay, after this MVP launch, we can work on another budget where we can work on the improvements that we couldn't work out within those deadlines. So my thing is, don't directly go on deadlines. See what is possible, what is not possible, and go for a realistic plan, not for an unrealistic and a plan that is very much hard for you to execute, and that puts you in a situation where you can't get out of. Yeah, so that is the experience that I have at the moment.
All right. So basically make it more simple so that you could plan it better. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So Sital, we have been discussing this for a long, whenever we start a new project, our clients or some clients might ask about the team velocity, and they might say about estimating time in Scrum, but we are not aware about the velocity of the team when the project is new. So in that case, how do you estimate time in Scrum on that case, if a client asks you to estimate on things?
Uh, First of all, thank you for the question, Milanji. So, when we talk about team velocity, planning items in hours or story points, when you start with the project, you don't have a clue about it, to be honest. You don't know how much your team can deliver within a sprint. You don't know how much, you know, story points worth of task can be done within the sprint. So what I normally do is, uh, if you're doing in hours basis, don't plan 8 hours per day for a developer, because nobody works 8 hours continuously, right? So what I normally do is plan 6 to 6.5 hours per day per developer. You accumulate that, and then you reduce the time for the Scrum events. Like you have your plannings, you have retro, you have review, you also do refinement meetings, right? So I reduce those, and based on that, we start our, let's say, the first sprint. And then you start looking into your burn down charts from burn down charts. So how much how much work has been completed. So your burn down charts in your daily Scrum meetings, see the progress, right? That will help you keep track of what is being done, how much time it's being taken. And at the end of the sprint, we have here in Proshore, we normally have our team agreement document where we document this kind of stuff. So in sprint XYZ, XYZ was hours was planned, XYZ hours of work was completed, and you start keeping those hours as your baseline. So further you go, the more sprints you have, the more concrete data you'll start having, and that will give you much more clear idea on how much hours or story points worth of task can a team deliver.
Yes, once you get a data, then you can always make decision based on the data driven. I think that answers Mukti's question. Thank you so much, Mukti, for the question about this. Uh, so over to you, Sital, as well. So we have different roles on our organization: product manager and product owner. Sometimes they wear the same hat. Product owner also wear the same hat of product manager. So in this kind of situation, uh, how do you think that Scrum process should align on this kind of things? Should they have a same role or should they have a different role?
Well, honestly, from my point of view or from my experience, I wouldn't suggest same person to play different roles within the same Scrum team, right? So let's say you have a product manager, you have a product owner. Product manager looks into a variety of things, right? Like the budgeting, the hiring, the sales, and everything. But when you look at product owner, the product owner is solely focused on making items ready for the team to work on. He or she is responsible for those backlog, making sure that the stories are there and everything is prepared for, so that he or she can discuss with the team, and the team can be based on that plan things, right? And there's things like other things that product owner also does, like having those product goals, making sure that all the sprints are aligned with the product goal. So when a product owner now has to work, let's say, like a product manager as well, then he'll have to shuffle between those two caps. When doing his product owner role, he has to put on his product owner hat, and when he's doing product manager role, then he has to put on the product manager hat, and that at times starts getting tedious, and those roles starts conflicting. So from my point of view or from my experience, I wouldn't suggest people to have multiple roles in the same Scrum team. Now, if you have to do it, there's no other option. Then what you can do is take help of your Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is there to facilitate things. The Scrum Master is there to help you, with solving your impediments. The Scrum Master is there to help you and guide you. So I'd suggest you to take help of your Scrum Master. At times, you need to take help of your developers as well, and in that way, you could bit more swiftly switch between those different gaps.
All right, managing the rules.
Yes.
So, and we do have one question from Jeevan, and I would like to redirect that question to Simon, sir. So, what do you do to motivate your team member if they worked more than 8 hours a day or even during the weekends? I think you are the best person to answer this.
Okay, thank you, Milanji. So, Jeevan, I think you have the experience. Maybe I think you are working on a more complex project, right? So it's better. Yeah. What we can do is we can plan better. So I think the main problem in your team is your team is facing is there's a problem in your planning. What we can do is for a couple of sprints you can measure your team's velocity. Okay, so if you are able to measure your team's velocity, then you can plan according to that capacity. Maybe even you are working for more than 8 hours because of improper planning. Or what may happen, what may have happened is that there are a lot of incoming bugs during the sprint, right? So that may, lead to working more than 8 hours a week, or even working on weekends. So what happens is that may happen in your case, but what we can do is the company or the Scrum Master can take your team to lunch or office lunch, I mean, and or for some kind of dinner and motivate. But the main thing is that you need to, uh, you know, what do you call? We need to solve that issue from the bottom instead of motivation is necessary, but make sure your Scrum Masters do a proper planning instead of working more than 8 hours a day. So that would be the best solution. Okay, Jeevan?
All right, motivate yourself, and of course, go with the flow on that. And proper planning is always a key. All right, we do have one question from Mukti, and I would like to redirect that question to Mr. Samir. So, which technique do you guys use for story point estimation? If any, can you please share your experience, pros and cons about the story point estimation that you do? You are on mute, Samir.
Sorry. Okay. Story point. Yeah. For me also, it was very hard for me to make my developers understand, to switch between story point to hours to story point at the beginning. And I still had a problem when my Dutch developers wanted, I wanted them to switch from hourly to story point. So more than techniques, I use a kind of exercises. First, why am I introducing story points instead of hours? Right? First, they need to understand it, because otherwise, if I just tell them, okay, from now this sprint, you just do this, they will not have that spirit to actually follow it and do it accordingly. So I did a lot of exercises like from Excel, from Excel and from other things, like t-shirt sizes or something like that, just to give them an idea of how actually story point works. Okay, and currently I'm using a Fibonacci series for my story points, and what I did was for my DOS developers, I use a Excel sheet where I pointed out where I in each column I pointed out the story points and asked themselves, okay, how much effort would for them, how much of effort would it take for them to just wash your hand or something like that? Just an easy, without any much effort, you can just do it. Okay, give me a bottle. Okay, how much effort does it take for you to take a bottle? So that kind of relation that they have to take in, and accordingly they have to see what kind of issues or tasks or cards that we have in the board that they can relate and make it so simple that it doesn't take effort. Okay, this is 2 story point, because we do not do it 1 story point at first, because there might be some stories that may come later that is more simpler, that then we have actually assumed that this is the simpler one. So accordingly, I told them to pick out the story. Okay, this is 2 story point compared to this. Another story point needs a bit more effort. So this is 3, this is 5, this is 8, this is 13. So something, those kind of exercises I carried out, and it took them a bit of trouble in the first 2 sprints, but after each sprint, I had a call with them, with my developers. Okay, how are you feeling, guys, now? Okay, still you guys have confusion? And at the time of planning, I just screen share my laptop and just open that sheet. Okay, if you guys have confusion, just relate to this document, because we have this kind of issues, pointing out to these kind of user stories. So it would be easier for them to adopt these kind of things. And story point is basically, we are not giving commitment, we are forecasting. So we are actually estimating on efforts. So yeah, that's how it did. And that is my experience. And that way my developer are also doing good on story points at the moment. Maybe my colleagues have different kind of techniques that they are using, are implementing in their team as well. Maybe they want to share something. Anyone?
I can add.
Yeah, sure.
So I think everything has been mentioned by Samir, but normally whenever you are starting with story points, Samir mentions more from the perspective that you need to make sure that your team understands what story point is, why we're estimating it. So the purpose behind why we are going from hours estimation to story point. So that's the first foremost. But if you want to go with, irrespective of it's an research side or Fibonacci, you can do exercise where that will kind of bring you to the story point estimation journey. So what you can do is you can let's say there are tasks. For example, there is a login screen that you have to make. You can just give a random numbers in that story point. Let's say it's a 2 story points or 3 story points. After that, every work that you want to estimate, you kind of relatively measure based upon this card. So let's say you want to kind of estimate the payment gateway issues. Then you compare, is payment gateway bigger work than the login work? Then definitely this will be bigger than 2 story points, 3, that maybe 3, 5, 8, or 13, whatever you want to do. Or if it's smaller, then maybe it's a 1 story points. So you start with something that you are very sure about, that this is this much hours of this much work, where you can immediately predict and deliver in that time. And then you really made it. As you move forward, maybe there is another things where you have to create an API. Then you compare, is API bigger than, let's say, this payment gateway? Yes, it's bigger than payment gateway. Sorry, yes, it's bigger than login. Is it bigger than payment gateway? If it's bigger, even it goes to 13 story points. So you relatively compare each of the cards with the exercise. And once I think your developers get an understanding of, okay, this is making sense, every sprints they can kind of relatively compare. So maybe start with this kind of exercise, go to do the story point estimation.
All right, that was very insightful. And Simon sir, I think we received one question from Vicky Sahani in chat, that what would be the difference between Agile and Scrum? Can you please share your experience about difference between Agile and Scrum?
Okay, so Vicky, so what I want to say is Agile is in philosophy, So what people are confused is, I think you have even heard of like inspection, adaptation, okay, and Agile principles and so many things. So what is actually Scrum is a methodology, okay? So Agile is at the top. So to implement Agile, Scrum is needed, okay? So to implement Agile, Kanban is needed. To implement Agile, extended program is needed. So it's basically to implement Agile properly in an organization for inspection adaptation, Scrum is the best, I think, in my opinion, because Scrum is a framework that contains different Scrum events, such as what you call daily Scrum, sprint planning, sprint review. So these events provide the ways for inspection and action, okay? So which help us on being Agile. So I just want to say is, to implement Agile, you need Scrum, okay? Or any other frameworks like Kanban, extended programming, pair programming. So this is the most difference between Agile and Scrum.
All right. And Samir, we are talking about Scrum values. So in Scrum values, we have like courage and transparency. So how do you think that courage and transparency is the most valuable thing in a Scrum team, and how can it lead to a better Scrum process?
Okay. There are certain values that is defined in the Scrum guide that is very much required when you implement Scrum in your process. So courage and transparency is one of them. Beginning with the transparency, like I said, you have to be very much transparent about what are the things that is possible and what are the things that are not possible, even to your product owner with the team as well. Okay. If that is not the case, then there will be kind of assumptions that will lead to many things that will not be good for you at the end, or your company or your product owner. So whatever is happening within the team, like, okay, within this sprint, we have planned this amount of work, okay, but at the end of first week of sprint, we figure out that, okay, the goal we have set is not achieving, we will not be able to achieve because of this factor. But we need to make sure that product owner is up to date with those kind of effects at the beginning as well, not at the end of the review, because it will be a shock to him when he hear that in the review everyone is there, when what his expectation will be in that call is like, in review, developers have built something, so I will get something that I can test. So it's very much, you should totally avoid giving news to your product owner or any of team members at the end of the things. Always try to give it things whenever we figure out those kind of issues. So he also knows, okay, this kind of issues are there, so how can we solve it? Those kind of agile mindset that you have to have in your team and your product owner as well. And for that, Scrum Master has to come forward and help them to adopt this concept, agile concept. Okay. And talking about the courage, this example can be used for courage as well, because not only you have the courage to tell them the truth, but you have the courage to see now what are the ways that now I can think of to make sure we get out of this mess. What are the values that we can create to the product owner? If this fails, he will get something in the end that he can present it to his or her business associates, the customers, users, that he can utilize and create value of. Okay, so yeah, this example I think sorts out the value and courage mostly in the Scrum. Yeah, that will be my thing.
All right. So connecting with the Scrum values, what we see. So connecting the Scrum values, we have like risk management with different kind of stakeholders, risk management with a different kind of internal team. So how do you handle internal conflicts within a team? But we say, how do you handle your experience on handling the internal conflict?
So I think if you look at the Scrum, there are a lot of values, and if your Scrum team adheres to these values, resolving conflict is much more simpler. So you have openness, you have respectful, you have courage, as Samir mentioned. There's a lot of your commitment. So basically, I think whenever you're starting with the Scrum team, you want to implement Scrum, the first thing you have to explain to developers are the values of the Scrum, because then only that behavioral changes. Now, irrespective of understanding all these things, there is always that chance that there will be internal conflict within the teams or with management or with clients. That will always happen because, and this is very natural because every person is different. Each individual in the team would have a different set of understanding, a different set of beliefs that they come into when working in a team. So it's very natural that people will have their own approach of thinking about any kind of problems and providing the solutions. So whenever there is a conflict, maybe the conflict is something that you have to address because they are trying to solve things, but their approaches are different. Maybe conflicts are interpersonal, that people don't want to work with each other. So you have to find a root cause, and you can do that by talking to people. So you can kind of assume things that, okay, this is the problem. You have to talk to people, you have to talk to the team, you have to talk to clients, whoever is directly or indirectly dealing with that, even with the management, if that is a major problem, a critical problem. So you have to talk to each and every one to understand the problem first, and you have to sort it. You have to understand the problem. You just don't react quickly after understanding the problem. For example, if someone says, I didn't want to work with that developer, you just don't react to that and act in that way. You have to see like why he doesn't want to work. You have to understand that. Normally, in my experience, whenever there are conflict happening, I try to use this thing called powerful questions, open-ended questions, where you try to understand things. I think you can Google it, what kind of powerful questions are. Whenever you are having conversation, one-on-one conversation with people, it will help you to expand information, get more information from the other side. So you ask this kind of question, try to kind of go into problems. You ask him a counter questions where, like, if you are in my shoe, how would you fix this problem? So maybe he has certain ideas as well, because you should not think that you have answers of everything. Sometimes the other side will also provide better or creative answers. So basically the idea is talk to that person, bring them, if there's two people that is having conversation, bring them into same conversation once getting information. Don't try to emphasize more on problem, emphasize into solve, and don't try to make problem too much complex. I see this with a lot of Scrum Masters. Whenever there's a problem, they try to magnify this problem, whereas maybe it's more based upon misunderstanding or assumptions. So try to make it more simpler. Try to understand, like, if I have to work with this person, or if I have to work with client, how the other person should behave. What is his accountability? If it's a product owner, what he needs to do in order for me to work this properly. So I think you can kind of play with this kind of things to resolve conflict. Of course, there will be cases where you may not be able to resolve conflict. At that time, you have to switch these members to different teams, because sometimes it's a behavioral thing that you cannot fix as well. And you should not also think that you can fix everything. In that case, you have to go in more, this kind of extensive measures of switching people into different teams. But most of the time, if you talk to these people, if you talk to these teams and try to get a clear information, I think there is this solution is much more simpler than what you think. So I think I would suggest to you guys to try this kind of approach. More people don't talk to each other, and then the problem arises, and it boils up when they know about the problem. Then it cannot be fixable. So that is normally happening.
So in a nutshell, communication is the key.
Exactly.
Yeah. In addition to that, we in Proshore, we're also doing a thing called team agreement. Preparing the team agreement document, whenever a team is formed, whenever we try to work on a new project, we are introducing a team agreement document. So we anticipate these kind of things. There will be like you said, a conflict between the team. Like, I don't like this. You are doing this. This is not supposed to be done. So this kind of conflict arises from those kind of situations. So what we are doing at the beginning of the project, start of the project, is creating a team agreement document where every team comes together, sit together, and defines things like, these are the standards of the codes that there should be. These are the things. Okay, these are the things you need to do when the card is moved from in progress till it goes to done. Definition of done, defining, okay, who has what kind of expertise, these kind of things, so that team already knows what to do, how to do it, and if there is any kind of problem, impediments, then whom to reach out or how to deal with it, something like that. So that will also help you to not totally, but somehow help to reduce the risk, that may arise in later phases.
All right. So with this, we have some other questions from Jivan. So I would like to read out, and I would like to redirect this question to Sital. So if you are working on a SaaS product, you have to take care of lots of clients, their issues and their daily concerns, which are simply unavoidable and is always a priority for PO. That may create chaos in between the sprint and may lead a developer towards frustration and switch frequently between tasks and switch between the tasks and extra hours. So what is the best possible way to tackle this one for the SaaS product? Sital?
Okay, thank you. So, so when you are providing software as solution, right? Yes, as Milan, you mentioned in the question itself, there are going to be problems. There are going to be some issues that goes past the development team. It goes to production, and then this kind of things gets higher priority for the product owner. Now, as a Scrum Master, what I used to do is I use something called priority matrix. So there are 4 different quadrants where you can see if there's something needs to be done right away, or something can be done later on, and planned in some other sprints, right? There's a priority matrix that I use, and whenever we have this discussion of issues with the product owner, I bring up that priority matrix, and then we see where we within that priority matrix does the uh, bug or the issue lie. So let's say if something is going to crash the system, where production doesn't work, this needs to be fixed on the right away, right? So in such case, if you haven't planned any buffer time within the sprint to tackle this kind of stuff, and something crashes the product, then it always gets the highest priority, right? So you bring that to the sprint backlog, but what you need to do is remove the same amount of work from lowest priority of sprint backlog, so that the developer doesn't have this uh, thing in mind to that they need to complete everything. So whenever you're bringing a highest priority task that needs to be done right away, you have that you can add them to the sprint backlog, but make sure that the lowest priority equivalent task is removed from the sprint to balance things out. And secondly, something that I also used to do is having a dedicated timeline for bugs. So let's say if it's a highest priority bug, then uh, what I do is I have, like, let's say 3 days 3 days for highest priority bug, let's say a week for high priority bug, 14 days for this medium kind of bug, and let's say 30 days for low priority bug. So based on that, you do if it's high priority and your sprint has already started, then I add it based on the priority matrix and remove the lower priority equivalent task. If it's, let's say, uh, before sprint planning, you can just add them. But if it's a low priority, which can be done later on, you add it to the backlog, prioritize them, and plan your things accordingly, so that the developer doesn't have to, uh, have that mentality of I need to fix it right away. The developers are human being. You need to chill out at times and uh, solve these kind of bugs, because if things get monotonous, then the solution that you could have come out when you were, let's say, free, uh, it tends to take much more longer than when you do when you are stress free, let's say.
All right. I think for the priority, I think you should always consult
I
with a
think
Scrum
Milan,
team. Yeah.
I thought you were on mute. Sorry.
Ah, for the priority, I think you should always consult with the Scrum team, which includes product owner as well. And from that, product owner always set the priority, and you can always define the priority for your backlog. So follow-up question for Sital as well on this. Can we do a backlog refinement while a sprint is running, or it should be done before the sprint planning?
Well, you need to understand that backlog refinement itself is a process and not a meeting. And backlog refinement can be done any day at any time. You don't have to wait for sprint to start to do backlog. You don't have to even wait for a project to start to do your refinement, because refinement is a process where you're understanding what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and maybe you do your splitting of tasks and everything. So uh, backlog refinement you can do whenever you want, whenever it's needed, but make sure that the checklist of backlog refinement is there. So let's say you have a checklist of writing user story, making things clear, writing acceptance criterias, maybe assigning some story points or assigning some hours, estimating them, sizing them. So those checklists, make sure that those checklists are complete. But backlog refinement, the process can be done any time of the sprint.
All right. So, Bobby C, we have one question from Kusalji that if a project should always have a fixed beginning and ending, can we all can we call applications like Facebook or LinkedIn, etc., a project? Because they are always ever changing. If yes, why? Or if no, then why?
Thank you, Kushalji, for the question. So I remember my earliest days when there was one of my professor that used to do project management to us. And this is the definition I had, like if something is called project, then it has a fixed closure, fixed ending date. I used to also be surprised, like, okay, it doesn't make sense because I'm in software development and we call everything project. I think if you have to look into this, you can look into this in different ways. This is my opinion. There may not be like specific answer for this, but maybe when Facebook or LinkedIn started, they started as a project because there was nothing. So they had to build a first version of what they want to market or what people is going to eat. Maybe at that time, the Facebook itself was a project. Now Facebook has grown very bigger. So it's not a project, it's actually an organization itself. And whatever Facebook does inside that organization, that probably are smaller projects they do. So for example, maybe they want to build a like feature initially stage. Maybe that was a project that they want to integrate with an API. They want to build an API in later stage. Maybe that could be a separate project. So inside Facebook, inside LinkedIn, since they are now a bigger kind of entity, whatever runs, I think that is running. They have like a lot of teams doing a lot of different projects about performance, about trackings, about security, privacy. All these are more like projects. So at this point, Facebook, I would not call Facebook as a project or application. It's basically an organization itself that runs a lot of projects within. And maybe this project has a closure date, or after closure date, it is maybe maintenance state. So I think you should look from that perspective.
Yeah, I think Facebook and LinkedIn, these kind of giant things has already established themselves as a product, not as a project, So within that project, within that huge product, they're always evolving with some kind of features, projects that they want to integrate within that product and make it more feasible to the users in the market itself. So we can look at it like that.
All right. So there is one question from Pooja to Simon, sir. So she just completed MBA from her college, and she is not so much technical person. She just completed her bachelor's or master's on business administration, but she wants to join in Scrum Master role. So is Scrum Master role or technical role? What would be your suggestion on this? You are on mute, Simon, sir.
Okay, I would say it would be like semi-technical. Okay, so Pooja, okay, so what happens is, Pooja, when you want to become a Scrum Master, you basically need some kind of skills, okay, and that is soft skills such as leadership skills, communication skills. That is the main thing you require. And we also have one Scrum Master in our team as well, Samir, who is not a technical background, but he's able to manage the whole team in a very correct and perfect way. Okay, so maybe Samir can more elaborate because he has more this kind of experience on becoming a Scrum Master as a non-technical person.
Thank you, Simon. But I would not call it a perfect way. It's my way, which actually works in my kind of environment at the moment with my team. So I actually started out as an intern in Proshore. And after that, gradually, I started working as an account manager. And after that, I had a question like, what next? So at that time, Bhavish Dai, Roshan Sir, who are the founders of Proshore, actually provided me with an opportunity to become a Scrum Master. Okay, with the things that you have, with the qualities you have, you can be as a Scrum Master. Would you like to try it? I said yes, but I had always a doubt in myself that whether I will be able to actually able to perform as a Scrum Master or not, because there are developers who have 10 to 15 years of experience, developers who have 3-4 kids who are at my age. How I will be able to handle them, how will I be able to make them follow the process that I have been setting up, because I'm just a youngster that have no experience in this kind of thing. But in my journey, Proshore has provided me some mentors like Hank from Netherlands and Bhavish Dai himself with a lot of things like you don't have to be technical, but you have to ask right questions at the right time. You have to analyze the situation, analyze the team members, analyze the project, how it'd be better for you, just to see, if you make this decision, how will it impact the team, or what kind of values it will create as a Scrum Master, what kind of values you can bring to your team, what kind of questions that you can ask. Okay, let's say that in a project there is some technical stuff that you don't know, but you have to see whether you have to actually do this or not. At that time, you can take the help of You can build a trust with your team lead as well. Okay, team lead is there to help you on a Scrum, on a more technical basis, and for the process basis, you have yourself rolling out, syncing with different Scrum Masters, having their experience, knowledge, and something like that. And for technical, you have your team. So I don't think it will be a problem if you don't have a technical background, but you have to have that desire, that courage. The values from Scrum plays a very great role in this kind of situations. So that is my experience. If my colleague have another kind of experience that can be shared in this call, then yeah.
I think Sital has experience from QA to project manager. So I think Sital will be the next person to answer this.
Thank you. So while I transitioned from being a QA to Scrum Master Project Manager, or whatever the label that you guys would like to use, uh, there wasn't a definite roadmap per se I had. So I had some discussion with Bobby Stein, who was our project manager back then. And one thing that I did was I learned a lot from him, how he used to manage things, how he get, to enforce those Scrum values to us, your Agile principles, how he made decisions based on the Agile manifesto, the four Agile manifestos. I looked into how he used to do things. Well, at beginning, I used to copy paste a lot of things that he did, and that didn't help me a lot actually, because copy pasting doesn't help you when you're doing project management. But what I normally did was did a daily retro of the decisions that I made, the changes that I did, what I did to manage my times, how I switched between my QA hat and a project manager hat. And every day during my retro, I always came up with better solution on how I could have done that. So what I did was basically after every retro, I tried it out the next day, and slowly all these Scrum values, the Agile principles, Agile manifestos, started becoming a really easy thing for me, easy thing to understand, easy thing to guide others to. And that's how I transitioned from being a QA to more of a project manager. There was a lot of guidance from Bobby's, the other team members I had. I had people like Kalvin Adai, who was a good mentor to me. He is a senior developer, and he mentored me a lot. I had other people who supported me in that transition, and that actually helped me a lot. So Proshore gave me that environment to try and fail and learn from that mistakes that I did.
All right. So following up on this, we have one question from Danny. So which communication challenges did you encounter during projects, and how did you overcome them? Over to you, Sital.
So communication, when you talk about communication, it's not just this one-to-one talks, or just reporting to client. You'll face a lot of communication challenges. Sometimes your developer might not be motivated. He or she might be going through something. So that's wherein your Scrum values openness comes up. You the person will not always open up to you. You have to, sometimes you have to go to them, give them that environment to speak up to you, right? And what I normally do is create that friendly environment with the developer, so that it's easier for them to come up to and speak up to you about anything. Doesn't matter, it has to be, it can be some personal stuff, it can be some project related stuff, whatever. Just be there to listen to them. And then there's communication challenges on the client side as well, right? Sometimes things are not getting reported to your client in time. Sometimes your projects might be delayed. Yes, at times you may miss those things. Now you cannot change the past, but you can always retro and make sure that this kind of communications are handled better in the upcoming days. You always make your plans accordingly. So maybe you just dedicate 1 hour of your day to look into emails, replying to them, and sending and forwarding emails. You can try different techniques. The techniques I apply might not be useful to you, but you can just try it out to help yourself.
All right,
Shall I add
Samir.
something?
Yeah.
Yeah. In addition to that, the communication, issue, how I solve it in my team is basically I use the daily stand-up. So each day I have a daily stand-up where every team is present. We talk about what are the things that we need to do, what are the impediments, blockers, anything. So in the daily stand-up itself, everyone is talking, everyone is speaking about the issues or something like that. And in the call itself, what we also try to do is, okay, we need to speak with the client, because I'm a Scrum Master. My role is not to create a dependency, but to create a self-organizing team where they themselves uh, uh, do these kind of things themselves with the client. So we kind of assign this kind of, the team agrees on who will be for this kind of particular issue, who is quite responsible for communicating with the client, or, okay, some developer is having this issue. Okay, another developer has this kind of expertise. You guys can collaborate, this kind of things. And whether they did it or not, how I verify it in the next daily sprint. Okay, did you do this? Because we agreed on some things yesterday, daily stand-up. Did you guys all did it or not? If not, then why not? Because you yourself agreed to it, right? So these are some steps that you can always do. Events itself is helping you to create the communication. And as Sital said, there are other things as well that you can try out yourself.
All right, so we do have 3 questions left on our chat box, which we'll be addressing, and we'll call it a day. So for the boys, our question is from Danny. What steps have you taken to cope up with a project that has massively deviated from its blueprint? Any experience on that?
Yeah, I think we had one project like that. I'm not going to name that, but there was like huge scope change. Even I don't know if the product goal was also changed. I think this happens. At that time, we did not do Scrum or Agile properly as well. So we didn't know how to kind of, start with this kind of project development where there's not. Normally, this happens when you try to take a waterfall approach on project management. That's why I think Scrum, the beauty of Scrum is it works with complex problems, dynamic environment. So basically, when you mentioned the project is deviated from what it needs to be done, I assume that, maybe I'm incorrect, but I assume that initially there was a lot of things that you have to build in the requirement phase. But as you move forward with the project, then things start changing and getting a lot of changes. And end of the day, you don't know which direction we're heading. That's I think Scrum is really, an Agile or in Scrum is a real good example of how you can solve this, because with Scrum you have a lot of iterative sprint, small side sprints where you can inspect things, you can adapt to the situation, you can incorporate different changes in early stages of program, you can make releases, you can validate whatever things that you build in sprints, it's working or it's achieving the end product goal or not. So I think your answer is straightforward. You need to kind of implement things like Scrum or any other Agile approach, but do it in a right way. So basically don't do Scrum like copy pasting, whatever, because that is not going to solve the problem. Just imagine like doing Scrum. If I don't have to take everything of Scrum, I'll just make sure that I copy the sprint part. I inspect it every time. As Samir mentioned, daily stand-up is where you can inspect, do a risk management. You have sprint planning where you can define. You have sprint review where you can see like, okay, we've achieved this. Do we need to change the priority of the product backlog for upcoming sprint? Do we need to add new things? Do we need to make something? Do you need to remove something that is obsolete at this stage? So you can kind of iteratively change things, adjust, adapt to this, create transparency, and solve this kind of complex problem. So, end of the day, maybe the requirement that you build in early stage, like 3 months kind of project, will have a lot of changes. That is something you have to anticipate. But with this, I think you can adjust all the changes and try to commit in the right direction. Because one thing it's very clear that you need to know, at least this is our mantra, that maybe the client also doesn't know what they want to build in early stage. So this cone of uncertainty is very high in the earliest stage of project. That's why Scrum, like a framework like Scrum, has been implemented to work in this kind of complex environment. If thing is haywire, because of that reason, the project is deviating, then it cannot be fixed by anyone except the God. That is my formula.
All right, so we will be addressing the last question from the chat, and the question goes to Simon, sir. So what are the list of reports you will be preparing as a Scrum Master? Might be report of velocity or anything like that. So what are the lists that you prepare as a Scrum Master?
So the first thing I would make a report is obviously velocity. Okay, because what happens is if we are not able to track those, then the developers might get frustrated, because what happens is there will be improper planning, because the developers is assigned a lot of tasks. Okay, so that's that kind of reports I made. And other report I make is from retro, so we have a very series of questions. For example, one question is, what is the team health and what is the project sentiments? So these are the very important questions to be asked in retro. What happens is at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter, we see that if the team health is very bad, then we need to address it as soon as possible. Okay, and also there's one question called, is the sprint goal achieved? Okay, so at the end of the month or a quarter, we see that 80% of the time the sprint goal is not being achieved. Then we can say that there is some issues and we need to address that as soon as possible. So basically, these are the things I make report of so that I can, do proper risk management and there won't be any problem within the team or within the product in the future. So that's it.
And I think
All
like
right.
also, I think it also depends upon project and project as well. You just cannot say Simon that is preparing and doing this kind of reports and I need the same report in my projects, because it might not be valuable for me because my team is behaving differently. So for me, just as velocity calculator, how my product owner is thinking. So it depends upon project to project and how Scrum Master sees the project. So it depends on the necessity.
All right. So if you had any sent question and it has not been answered, please do let us know. So we have 1 minute for that. If you want to ask any questions, raise your hand or do let us know on chat and we'll be call it for a day. Do we see any hands? So there is one question from Jivan. So that will be our last question from our side. So his question is, do you know anyone during the career so far who has changed the role from developer to SM? And if he has taken that role, was it a good decision? So anybody on the panel can answer this.
I think it's this.
I'm an example. I was a developer before. I changed my role to Scrum Master. So it was a good decision. You have to think from this perspective. So when you're a developer, when you're a designer, when you're a QA, any role, if your passion is more about, if you're happy about managing people, if you're happy about managing projects, then you need to go into this role. It's not like, yeah, I want to be Scrum Master because of this. It should not be like that. You need to be very passionate about what you're going into. For myself, when I was developing, maybe I was interested in tech stuff, but I was also interested more in structuring things, organizing, doing it in the right way. I think that was the inclination that I had. And then I slowly moved into project management or role or in Scrum Master kind of accountabilities in this case. So you can be developer, you can be QA like summaries and account managers. So because he showed some traits of what Scrum Master needs to do, we found like, okay, maybe summary is the right person to kind of go into. So we tried out, and I think now he's happy at least doing this kind of role because he's able to explore more on this area, which probably would have been less if he has still been doing account manager, because there may be some other things. So if you also want to think of doing this Scrum Master role, first you have to connect. Do you really want to go in this kind of managerial track, or do you really want to go in more individual track where you want to be more a technical lead, not managing stuffs? We have one guy in Proshore itself who who is a developer, who is slowly jumping into the Scrum Master role. And it's just because he has passion for doing this kind of stuff. So you have to think from that perspective.
All right. So meanwhile, if you have any more questions about Scrum, please do reach out to us through our email or any other social accounts. We will be happy to reply to your answers and we'll get back to you on this. So saying this, thank you so much, all the panelists, Samir, Simon, Sital, and Bhavish. It was really an insightful discussion regarding Scrum. Wish to have more talk like this in the near future as well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining the 7th webinar on Scrum. We hope that this was of value to you, and we look forward to your presence in future season as well. To stay updated about Proshore events, follow us on social media, which you will see in the chat. You will also get connected with our panelists through their LinkedIn account. And you will be also seeing the popping up thing that is a feedback form. So please do fill up that. And final thing before you leave the session, after you leave the meeting, the feedback form will be released in your Zoom browser. Please do give us feedback about the event. And thank you so much, everyone, for this participation. Have a lovely day, everyone.